This is not your traditional sourdough bread. This is your sourdough bread for the very, very lazy person like me. So this is my traditionally made sourdough bread, which took effectively 36 hours, I think, by the time I got it done. And this is my lazy person sourdough bread that I made yesterday. And this is a moment of truth. I am going to cut it to see whether it's something that we can live with. I have to use an electric knife because I can't cut sourdough bread. There we go. And that's the lazy person's one. It's actually not bad. It's a denser bread, but do you know what? For the time it saves when you need to have bread every day, I think it's worth doing. I was going through various videos and I found one by a chef called Ben Starr, and I think during the lockdown he created this lazy person's sourdough bread. And he says that he feels that a lot of people don't make bread sourdough bread, because of all the rules and regulations and the amount of time that it appears to take. And he points out quite rightly that sourdough bread was the very first bread. It's made from natural yeasts, and it was made without rules and regulations in the past. And this lazy person's way, which is denser bread, but so much easier, is the way forward if you want to just do your run-of-the-mill bread. So I'm going to show you how to do it in the Thermomix. These are the ingredients you need. And starters. Now let me talk to you about a starter. I'm not going to say too much about it. Get someone to give you 110 grams, 120 grams, actually a little bit more, 150 grams of their starter. And you can then make a lazy sourdough bread, and you also have some left over to feed for another loaf. So this has been sitting around in my fridge since the 1st of July, and it's got this brown liquid on top, which is hooch, alcohol, and I've been told in the past you need to throw that away, but Ben Starr just mixes it all in and uses it. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm not going to show. So the way he makes this bread is to first weigh in. He doesn't do it in the Thermomix. He uses scales, and that's the beauty of having a Thermomix. You've got your built-in scales. And what he does is, I think there's a cable. Yeah. What he does is he mixes in the hooch and everything into the starter and weighs in 110 grams. That's it. Okay, I've got 111, I can live with that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to feed this later so that I've got another batch going for another time. This is quite an old one. Oh, while we're on starters, this is my white starter, which I just feed with white flour. These I feed with wholemeal flour because they seem to enjoy eating it more. And this one is, I don't even know when I made this one. I can't even see. 14th of July I fed this. So I've got lots of little bits that I can use, and now that I've discovered this recipe, none of it is going to go to waste. Because Ben Starr says it's a myth. He's kept it in the fridge for ages and not fed it, and as long as it doesn't smell really, really bad, it's fine. So I'm going to go with him on that. Okay, and now I'm going to add 325 grams of filtered water to this. I hope I've pre-weighed it correctly. Look at that, perfect. Right, And then what I'm going to do is to give this a stir for 10 seconds. Why don't we just do it for 20 seconds? And on speed 2. All we're doing is making sure it's nicely mixed together. Okay? That's now stirred nicely. To this, I'm going to weigh in, and you have to bear with me because I haven't pre-weighed this. Put the scales on, and I'm going to weigh in my flour, 560 grams of it. I always find when I'm doing this in front of the camera, it always goes wrong. Next loaf I make, I'm going to do a blend with wholemeal flour. I have included the recipe, so please have a look at that for the ingredients list. And now I'm going to add my 20 grams of salt, which again I think is a lot of salt, but we don't eat that much salt. But I'm going to do it this time. Next time I'm going to try and reduce the salt. So then what I'm going to do is put the lid on. And what I do here is I go back to the main screen and I give it a stir before I start kneading it. So I'm going to give it a stir for about 30 seconds on speed 2. And I'm going to have a look through the hole. I can do it a bit faster actually. Okay, and now it's sort of bound up, and I'm now going to knead it. And the reason I do that is I like to keep a clean lid, and if I go straight to knead, I'm always afraid that the flour is going to go onto the lid and make it more difficult to clean anything for an easy life. Okay, and now I'm just going to knead it for 2 minutes, and whilst that's happening I can shout over the kneading and talk to you about what you do next. Never leave your Thermomix alone when you're kneading because it will jostle about. So once that's kneaded, that's it. Your sourdough first step is over, and this is where you have to wait because it is a natural process and you can't avoid it. So put it into a bowl, put some cling film that's been lightly greased on top of the dough. Now this is our dough kneaded up for 2 minutes, and I'm going to tip this into a bowl. Most of it should come out. And another one. Get the spatula lightly. So the dough is sticky, but it actually comes off. Doesn't stick to the spatula, which is great, a silicone spatula, so have a silicone spatula handy. It does sort of come right off. A little bit fiddly to do it at this angle. Put that in there. And I can whiz this in the Thermomix on turbo and get the worst of it off. But you know what? It doesn't really need it. It's come off so well. Right, so now I'm going to take it, put it back on here, and I am going to whiz it. I'm going to put it on turbo for a couple of seconds. Release the handles, come on. I'm just being picky, but it's pretty clean. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to rinse this off in the Thermomix. So I'm going to get some water. I'm filling the bowl quite high, not almost to the maximum, putting it onto the Thermomix because with a drop of washing up liquid. Make sure you've got the measuring cup on, and I'm going to set it for a minute at 60 degrees on speed 6. Give it a good wash. Now, this dough now has to rest on your worktop in the kitchen for 12 to 24 hours. So that's the longest wait we've got. And what I've got here is one that I made yesterday, about 12 hours ago, and it has pretty much doubled in size. More even. So that is the first phase of making the sourdough bread. Pretty simple, but you do have to wait for it to rise naturally. I'm going to stop that now because it's making a racket. So this I'm going to put aside, just leave it there, and go on to the next phase. Right. What you should have prepped when you're doing the second phase is a bowl similar in size to the Dutch oven that you're going to bake the bread in. I think this one works. The glass one that I have as well does work. And what I've got ready is a piece of greaseproof paper, because what I'm going to do when I come to bake it is to lift the paper with the dough in and chuck it into the cast iron pan. So I'm going to put that piece of paper in there, and I'm going to flour it in advance. People use cornmeal and rice flour. I haven't tried any of that, but I will do. But anyway, he talks about being very generous with the flour. I don't think you have to be when you're using greaseproof paper, but I'm just going to give it a flour. And then I'm going to move this away and get ready for the moment of truth. I'm going to pour out the flour onto my board, the excess. And what we're aiming to achieve here is a boule. I'm not very good at this. Please do not criticize me. I haven't been doing this very long. I've never been very good at baking, so bear with me. But watch Ben Starr's video because he does it really well. Okay, so I've created a nice floured board here, and I'm going to tease my dough out. It's sticky, but it's beautiful. It's got lots of air in it, and the idea is you don't want to lose the air if you can avoid it. So let's keep as much of it as we can. And I say it again, I'll keep saying it because I'm not an expert, so please do not follow me, follow Ben, and follow the numerous videos on YouTube showing you how to make sourdough bread, because they do a lot better than I will. I'm really excited because it makes it so easy in the Thermomix. Okay, so I'm going to take this out. I'm going to put this aside. And I'm going to flour my hands really well, and I'm going to put lots of flour on top of here as well. He was very generous in his video, so I'm going to be too. And then the palms of your hands have to be well floured. And what he does is he sort of pushes it up. I'm not doing very well, it's sticking. You sort of, you start at the back and you pull it towards you, that's right. I'm just doing it the wrong way. And you're achieving a ball without losing too much air that's already been forming in there for 12 hours. And I think he did it for about 3 or 4 times. This is formed nicely. Oh, now I had a nice ball and I turned it into something else. Okay, I'm not playing around with this too much. I like the shape. It feels right for me. So I'm going to try and pick it up. Flour that again. You have to be quite agile to do this efficiently. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this in here, put a cloth over it, and that stays for a couple of hours. He says 2 to 4 hours before you can use it. Now, you don't have to use it straight away. The beauty of this is you can make a couple of loaves, and once you've achieved this, put it straight in the fridge, and it's good in the fridge for 2-3 days. I think he's even left it for longer. And what Ben Starr says is that the longer you leave it, the better the flavors develop, but the denser the bread becomes. So I'm going to leave this in the fridge overnight because I've made the other loaf that I showed you and I'd like that to get eaten before. So I'm just going to cover this with a piece of cloth and leave it in the fridge and then bake it tomorrow. So this video is not showing you the baking side of it, just the preparation using your Thermomix. When it's risen to the right level, 2 to 4 hours, you have to score. That's the other thing that you have to do. You have to score it so that the bread breaks in a nice way. The crust breaks as it's rising nicely. And I was totally intimidated. I was told you need a lamb to do it. And I was shown you could buy a blade. It looks like a cutthroat razor. Or I made it. I made one using a razor blade. Of course, I cut myself when I was doing it. But again, thank you so much, Ben Starr. He says just use a pair of scissors and you snip the bread 3 times, however many times you want, and that's your scoring done. So that's my way of doing it from now on. After the 2 to 4 hours, when this has risen, 1 hour before you bake, turn the oven on to hot, 240 degrees centigrade, and leave it with the Dutch oven being a cast iron pan, pretty much the same size as the bowl in which your bread is resting. Leave the cast iron pan in the oven to heat up at least half an hour, if not an hour. And when you're ready, take the lid off with a pair of gloves, put it somewhere safe, and then lift this up and drop it into the cast iron pan, put the lid on, stick it back in the oven, and you leave it there, reducing the temperature to 225 degrees centigrade. And what Ben Starr does is he bakes it with the lid on for 30 minutes at 225 degrees, and then he takes the lid off and bakes it for a further 10 to 15 minutes. But if I don't get this video out now, it'll never get done. So I'm not waiting till tomorrow to bake the bread for you. It works, and I'm completely sold on sourdough bread. I will continue to use the long method when I want to make that extra special loaf of bread, but this is brilliant too. So do try it.